and welcome to our interviews for the 2023 Black History Month celebration. Today we have Minister Sandra T. Trice. She is the owner and CEO of Trice Funeral Home, which has celebrated 50 years of serving our community in 2021. She served 16 years as the District 1 County Commissioner in Upson County, and she was the first Black woman elected to serve in District 1. She taught 25 years in the city of Thomaston and Upson County school system. In 1973, she joined the Fellowship Baptist Church and is presently serving under the leadership of Pastor Rico Williams at the Rising Star Baptist Church. Minister Trice, welcome to our podcast today. We're so glad to have you with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Good. I also want to welcome Mr. Chris Fagan. He is our technical director and the man behind the scenes who's making all this happen. We could not do this without Chris, and I want to thank him for being here. He has podcast on Facebook called Talk Your Culture that airs live on Mondays at 7 p.m. He also posts that to YouTube and Instagram, so you can catch him in all three places. Be sure to give him your support and watch his podcast. Let's begin our interview with Ms. Trice.
Okay.
And I want to ask you about, personally, tell us who Sandra Trice is. You can tell us about your childhood, your upbringing. Just give us a little background into who Ms. Sandra Trice is.
Thank you. I was born in a little small town called Social Circle, Georgia, in Walton County. And I had one mother and a father in a home. There was 6 children in the home, and we were raised up in a Christian home. My mother and father worked very hard, and she sent 4 children out of the 6 off to college. She believed in education. Actually, my mother was a graduate of high school and had the opportunity to go off to college herself. So she certainly believed in education. We were raised up in a little church called Cargill Chapel AME Church. I joined the church at age 12 years old, and I was in the church until I left school and went off to college. I graduated from Carver High School in Monroe, Georgia, with the class of 1966, and then I entered Fort Valley State, and I graduated in of August of 1971. It is strange that I ended up in Thomaston because I never looked for a job. And I often tell this to young people that if you prepare yourself, they'll come for you. They'll come and get you. I graduated in August of 1971, and it was the beginning of the Honoree Junior High School, and the city school had integrated. And they called down to Fort Valley State, and they had 3 openings for physical education teachers. And they asked for our names. I came up on Friday for an interview, and I reported to work on Monday for the job. So I never knew what it's like to ever look for a job. And that's why I believe that you're destined to be in a certain place.
Yes.
So I was destined to be here in Thomaston and Upson County. But that's how I end up here. But we was raised up like most children are during that time, and we didn't have a whole lot of activity to go to school except school and church, and that was our upbringing, and that was all that we had to do was to go to school and go to church. And I think that's what molded my father, and as well as all the children in the family. We were molded to stay in school and to go to church.
Absolutely. From your biography, I learned that you were the first Black woman elected to serve as the Commissioner of District 1. So what urged you to run for that position to begin with, and what was your hope to accomplish in our community at that time?
District 1 became, when the county was split into district, and District 1 was made to be a predominantly Black district. At that time, my husband ran for county commissioner, and he won that district, District 1, the first time it was opened up, and he was the first Black representative in District 1. He served about 11 and a half years on the commissioner board, and I worked along with him. Being my husband, I taught school, and I was involved in a lot of the activities. He passed in 1996, and when he passed in 96, the position came open. That was the year that they were going to have the election. Most people thought that I knew about the position working along with my husband, so I was directly involved with him as being the county commissioner. I learned a lot from him. At the time that I ran, I believe there was 5 other people that ran against me, and it was said, surely she won't win without a runoff. And of course, we won the position without a runoff.
Wow.
And so I was just urged to run for the position since my husband had a lot of unplanned work that he wanted done in District 1. And I wanted to make sure that some of those things was accomplished that he had worked so hard on.
Yes. That's good. And I know you have accomplished a lot in that district while you were there.
Yes. One of the things that he wanted to do, and I wanted to try to improve on, was to improve the housing in that area. There was several community block grants that he had brought in the community. He was working on one that involved, I think it was Holloway Street. It involved the playground, it involved the school, and I was able to finish that one up for him. One of the things that I was most saddened by is that all of the schools that had closed in the county, they were eventually used for other things. You know, people turned them into useful in the community. But they let Lincoln Park School sit too long, and it was destroyed. And that really broke my heart because I knew that school had so much potential to be helped within our community, and we lost that school. It was the only school in the community that wasn't used to enhance that community. So that really broke my heart.
I understand.
Yes. Yes.
No longer stands. I do remember that building being there.
Yeah, it was there. It was there, and it had potential to be. That's in the community. We looked at, maybe education for smaller schools, teaching parents about, taking care of children. It had so much potential, but they let it sit too long. It was destroyed, and believe it or not, it was buried underground. So that is the one thing that really broke my heart when it comes to thinking about our community. The only school that was not ever used was Lincoln Park School.
Oh, goodness. That is sad. How many years have you been the CEO at Trice Funeral Home?
Well, my husband died in 1996, and we have been the CEO since then. Several things happened in 1996. He passed January 23rd. Which is coming up to be 27 years now, I believe it is. And we took the position, and I was teaching school, and I had just put in 25 years. The state had just opened up a plan where we could take an early retirement at 25 years, and I knew that I would have to be there to run the business. My youngest son was in mortuary school at that time and was graduating in December. He was going to get licensed. So I knew that someone had to be there to run the business. So I took an early retirement. So I began that position in 1996.
Okay. Now, was your husband the first founder of Trice?
He was the founder of Trice Funeral Home. Most businesses have funeral homes are passed down in the family, but he and 2 other gentlemen, I give them credit, Bill Wright and Mr. McDowell out of Griffin, and my husband, George Trice Jr., started the business in 1969.
Okay.
And so and then later on, he ventured out and he bought their parts out and started Trice Funeral Home. Okay. At that time, it was Lincoln Memorial Chapel Funeral Home, and then he bought them out and started Trice Funeral Home.
Okay. And when did you expand to Barnesville?
We expanded in Barnesville, I think it was in 2000. I think we've been over there now 11 years.
Okay.
11 years, we expanded to Barnesville. We went over there actually to help this gentleman that had been in funeral business for many, many years, Mr. Abraham, and he was getting up in age, and he needed some assistance with the business. And my son went over to help him, and eventually he passed, and we bought that business out and started Trice Funeral Home in Barnesville.
Okay.
It's our second location.
Okay. You've described to me that your call into ministry was your greatest call.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your call and how that came about?
Yes. I get excited when I talk about that. Hopefully I can get it all out. My sister first had went into ministry 5 years before me. She was a teacher too. And we always believed that the Lord just didn't call us to be teachers in the classroom, but to be teachers of His Word as well. Remember, we were brought up in the church, and as long as we stayed with our mom, we had to be in the church, and we participated on every activity,
Right.
Mother's Day, Christmas, Easter. There was no exception. So when she went into the ministry, I think she began to pray for me to come, and of course we waited because I had to be very sure. Being in a Baptist church, and it was kind of a little difficult then when you're in a Baptist church and you're going to step out and be a minister. It was a little easier in the AME church. She began to pray for me to come. And so I was working in the church, and I was the church secretary. I'm not going to call the church name because you'll probably hear it later on. And there were so many people that had needs in the church, in the church and outside the church. And the church is supposed to be a help to the community. And so if someone came and they had a need, or I had a high gas bill this month, and I can't buy the food, or I had a exceptional high light bill and I need help with the light bill, or I've got a sick child and I need help with medicine or whatever. And so they will bring their needs to the church. Well, this particular church was discussing their needs within the church, and I was really concerned about that because I didn't think you need to discuss private people business out in the opening, even if you were in a meeting. So I asked them if they would allow me to maybe form a committee and let us take the needs in from the community, and then we will go through the needs, and then we'll try to meet them, and without everybody trying to know what is going on with the family, because
Right.
that was their private business, even though they brought it to the church.
Right.
And they said, well, Miss Trice, your heart too generous. You probably wouldn't work well with that. So I went back and I prayed about it again. And then I said, okay, well, give me a couple of deacons to work with me and a couple of mothers to work with me. And then they can help us with, taking care of the needs of the church. And they said, no, I don't think that'll work. I said, okay, one more thing. Give me $300 a month, $300 every 3 months. Let us take these funds and use them to take care of the needs that come into the church, and then we'll give you a report on how we spent the money and see if we need additional funds the next 3 months. And so we'll be good stewards of it. I said, no, your heart is too generous. You won't be able to do it. So I prayed about it. I said, now, Lord, everything that you've given to me to give to the church, to help the needs in the community, they turned me down. So he said, well, you do it. And I say, you do it. Then I said, okay, I prayed about it. So the next morning, because I hear from, you can either hear through the Lord from fire or through water. And I had been hearing him for a long time, but I just wasn't answering. I took several trips down to Jekyll Island. I could hear his voice in the ocean. I could hear him speaking to my heart. I could just hear him, but I just wasn't ready. Again, I'm in a Baptist church, and there's no other women have come out of this church yet. So then I said, okay. So he told me, I want you to go clearly. I want you to open up this account, and I want you to call it A Little Help from Heaven. And I want you to plant the first seed in it. And this was December of 2003. And I opened up the account. And the next day, he told me again, he said, now I want you to call everybody on your staff to go and plant a seed within this ministry. Everybody. He said, you just tell them, they'll do it. So I told them, some did, some didn't. The third day, he said, now I want you to call every black business in this community and ask them, tell them where it is. And at that time, it was in the Bank of Upson. Tell them to go to that account and plant a seed in this ministry here. And I did. Some did and some didn't. On the fourth day, he said, now that you learned how to hear from me, why haven't you answered your call? So, okay.
How did you respond to that?
I prayed about it. And that was for the next 8 months. I didn't answer that call until August of 2004. And I talked to my pastor about it. And others had seen it, others knew it, that there was a calling on my life. But again, being the first woman to come out of that Baptist church, I didn't think they were going to receive me, but they did. And about that time, I was ready to say, okay, with this ship, another ship, wherever it is, I'm ready to go. The doors was opening up to me, and they were going to, they knew me. I was here, they knew me. And one thing about in funeral business, you cannot operate without the Spirit of God. I don't care what you say or how they do it, you cannot do. You're ministering right where you are. I believe that regardless of where you are, when a person gets ready to go into ministry, he begins to allow you to minister right where you are. When my students that I taught in school said that they weren't surprised that I was ministering because I was ministering when I was at the school. So you will take us around that corner and you give us one of those old-fashioned Mother Day talks. They said you were ministering to us in school.
Yes.
And it was amazing that one of my students told me that, because I was giving them what my mom had gave me, what I was raised up on. And that you come to school, you behave, you do your work, you do well, and you're going to be successful, So I was already ministering. I just need to get the license to do it. That's all it was. So it started from there. Even when I accepted my call in August of 2004, I didn't actually do my first sermon until November, the second Sunday in November in 2004. And I clearly remember, I can tell you, this is the honest goodness truth. There were 33 ministers at that first sermon.
Wow.
So somebody really wanted to know, let's see if this is for real. I counted them. I looked around. There might have been some I missed. They was on the side, on the right and the left. Ladies, there were men in the pulpit behind me. They were in the audience. 33 of them.
Wow.
33 of them.
Talk about trial by fire, right?
Yes. And the one thing that I shall always remember, you'll always remember your first sermon, there were 3 or 4 children came to the Lord on the day that I did my first sermon.
Wow.
That's just how powerful it was. And when you can get someone to accept Christ on the day of your first sermon, I think that comes to validate you. I think he lets you know that, this one is for real. This one is for real. It all comes from just being obedient, doing what he asked me to do. And I'm going to tell you now, when I accepted that position to minister, I knew 15 years before then that I was supposed to do it. And I have to be honest, I was disobedient because I didn't want to do it. And there was the fear of them accepting me because there was no other women out of that church where I come forward to do my first sermon. So there was a fear. But when I got over the fear of it, I was ready to go. And my husband, and I got to share this, and whenever everybody talk about my ministry, in his last year, I remember talking to him about it in 95. I told him, I said, Trice, I call him by his last name, Trice. I believe that the Lord is calling me to minister. And he said, you don't have to convince me. These are his words. He said, you don't have to convince me, because when you get ready to go, me and no one else is going to be able to stop you. Those were his words. Nobody's going to be able to stop you. And he was close to the Lord, and he knew the Lord, and he trusted him as well. He always knew that the Lord guided his footsteps in all the things that he did. He knew that.
Yeah.
So he told those words to you. Don't have to worry, because when you get ready to answer me, and no one else is going to be able to stop you. And he was right.
He was.
He was right. He was right. And it's coming up to, 2004. I believe it's going to be 18 years, 19 years this year in November. I've had a lot of experiences, and there's been so many that there was this one lady I got to take. She lives in my community. She's a pastor, and she knew, some kind of way she knew, and the Lord might have told her that I was coming. And she said, when this one come forth, it's going to be a whole lot more that's going to come. That's what she said.
Wow.
Because she was out there for a long time. She and 3 other pastors was out there for a long time, just them. But she said, there's one that's going to come forth. And when she come forth, there's going to be a lot more of them going to come behind her. And sure enough, that did happen.
Wow.
Yeah, it did happen.
That's exciting.
There's a lot more that has come out. And it's just a stigma to them that think that women aren't supposed to minister. Those that travel with Jesus was ministers that minister unto him. Amen. I know I'm right now. I know I'm right. I told you I get passionate about that now
Yes.
when I talk about my calling. Okay.
That's right. Well, let's step to the side just a little bit
Okay.
from that and tell us about some of your volunteer service. I noticed that you volunteered with the Lincoln Park Volunteer Fire Department.
Yes.
And my husband's a firefighter, so that's
Good.
that's dear
Yeah.
to my heart. So,
My husband, when he was working in the community, he started the Lincoln Park Volunteer Fire Department.
Really? I
So
didn't know that.
all these things that I got involved in because I was working with him. And it's strange because you have. I was teaching school. I didn't come up in funeral business, but when I married him, I didn't have a choice. So it seemed like everything he was involved in, I was involved in. We were just a team. So he started the Lincoln Park Volunteer Fire Department, and because he was involved in one of the things to be in the community that we could be proud of, and so he was the first fire chief.
really?
Lincoln Park Volunteer Fire Department. And he had one son that started off working with him, but he didn't hold all as long. And so I was there was a club called the Lincoln Park Citizen Club, and we kind of backed him. He was the president of the Lincoln Park Citizen Club, and we combined with him in the fire department to help build the first fire department, to help fund the trucks, because they didn't have but a few volunteers. They didn't have any money either.
Yeah.
And so after we finally got started, then the county started giving us $500 a month to help fund the volunteer fire departments. And they still do that today. They give them funds to help fund the equipment. And so with the first money we were getting, and with the help of the Lincoln Park Citizen Club, we had the building, and that was the place, the home of the first Lincoln Park Volunteer Fire Department. We helped fund that truck, helped them purchase a truck, and the Lincoln Park Citizen Club, I think they helped fund 3 different vehicles.
Oh,
3
wow.
different fire trucks. And before I stepped down from being the secretary, all our bills were paid. The last fire truck was paid for. And fire trucks are not cheap.
They are not.
They are not cheap. And so I ended up being the secretary treasurer for them and made sure the bills got paid. And again, with him being the fire chief, so I stayed on and worked with him. And one of the other ones, I think you mentioned about things that involved the committee was the Thanksgiving meals.
Yes.
My husband started the Thanksgiving meals.
Wow.
And so when he passed, we carried it on. In his memory, we carried it on. I remember the first year he did it, and he wanted to. 1988, there was people in the community that may not be able to cook the full Thanksgiving meal, and we always was blessed to have Thanksgiving, and he wanted to make sure that everybody else had that same traditional meal, and from 1988 to 2019, the menu never did change.
Wow.
It just never did change. But we carried it on for him, and one of your honorees has picked it up since.
Yes, Miss Krishanda?
That's it.
Yes.
I
Okay.
passed it
So
on
that
too.
stemmed from yours.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
And now I support her. We did it for 30 years, and I couldn't physically it, but we did it for as long as we could. And when she came forward, I was just so happy to see her carry it on, and now I support her and help fund her meal so that she can carry it on in the community. But my husband started the Thanksgiving meals, so that was one of the volunteer things that we did. And I won't mention all the other. There was a lot of civic activities that I was involved in. The New Lincoln chapter Order of Eastern Star, that I went from being a member to the worthy matron to the district matron. And, so I was involved in a lot of activities within my community. None of them were greater than the fire department, which is still going on, and the Thanksgiving meals. None of them touched those. And now the ministry.
Yes.
They don't compare.
Yes.
They just don't compare.
Looking back over your life, is there one person that impacted you the most? I can tell that your husband had a great influence on your life.
Yes. He did. I think my mom was one of them, the way she raised us. My mom lived to get 90 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, she passed in 2014. And she was blessed to be able to take care of herself for 89 years.
Oh, wow.
In the last year and a half, I brought her to live with me. And I took care of her in my home. In the midst of working the business and carrying on the ministry, I took care of my mom because that was our duty. My other two sisters, they came down every other weekend, and it was their job to take care of her on Friday, Saturday. They would go back on Sunday, and then I took care of her during the weekday. And so we had a plan. We had a plan. She actually passed at my home. We took care of her the whole time. And so I think my mom had the greatest influence on my life because of the example that she set for us. She was in one church for 71 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so she had a great impact on her church. Being in AME, she's seen many pastors come and go. She's seen members come and go. But she say, pastors come and go, but I will never, ever leave my church. And so she was really honored on her celebration of life for being in the church for 71 years and never wavering in her faith, always trusting God. So I think she had the number one impact. I think, again, my husband, I've always had a giving heart, and he had a giving heart. And so I think he was the other person that impacted. There's a lot of more people in this community that has had a great impact on my life as well. I think people that worked with me, and she worked right down to the end, Rosalie Carter, who worked with us in the Lincoln Park Fire Department, and she passed several years ago, but she was faithful, and she taught me how to be strong in the midst of everything that you go through. She taught me how to be strong and to rely on your faith. So she was one of the persons that had a great impact on my life, was Miss Rosalie Carter. Okay.
Now, what would you say? Well, I feel like I probably already answered this question.
Yeah.
I feel like, what would you say would be the thing that you are the most passionate about in serving our community? What would you like to leave an impression on this community?
There is a song that one of my girlfriends always sing. I met her 50 years ago. We've been friends for 50 years. And I met her when I first came to Thomaston. And she sings this song. It's a beautiful voice. Vivian Logan. I call her name out. She sings this song that says, only what you do for Christ will last. That's the only thing that's going to matter.
That's right.
It doesn't matter what buildings you may have in your name, what statues they build for you. My husband never wanted a street named after him. He had this little saying, say, if I go before you, don't let them name a street after me, because people will run over you while you're living, and they want to keep running over you when you're gone. So he said, always stuff, don't let them name a road after me. And I didn't do that. We named Trice Funeral Home Chapel in his memory. It's called the George E. Trice Jr. Memorial Chapel. So that song that she sings often for me, only what you do for Christ is going to last. Only what you do for him is going to be counted in the end. So it doesn't matter, what great service you do or what name they put on a building. If you don't do it for him, if it doesn't have heart meaning and you do it for him, for his people, and for the cause of his people, it's not going to matter no way. So I'm passionate about helping others. And I guess it really came out to me when I married my husband and being in funeral service and being helping others to get through it. I have seen a lot from the passing of mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers, from children. That's the one thing that really touches my heart, is when we lose a child,
Yes.
I experienced that with my oldest sister. She had, I think her son was like 8 or 9 years old when he passed. And it's heartbreaking when a child leaves, but we know that even that child at that age has served his purpose here, and I understand that. And we finally did understand that his purpose had been served. But that's the one thing, is helping God's people, and either they're not God's people, helping people in general. Because when Christ walked on this earth, it didn't matter what stature you were, it didn't matter where you lived, what you had or what you didn't have. He was concerned about everybody. And you have to understand too that everybody's not going to dress like you, they're not going to live like you live, they're not going to be in the community, they're not even going to look like you look. My ministry has not discriminated against no one. No one. Doesn't matter what color is, as long as, which what Lord gave me, there was a single parent with children. And it could be a single mother or it could be a single father have called and asked me for help. It could be an elderly parent, elderly citizen, or it could be anyone that's disabled. That's who I'm supposed to help. And that's what I'm passionate about, because those are the same ones that he reached out to. The ones that people want to walk by and not look at and not help. So that's where I am. And the best part about it is that nobody has to make the decision about who we're going to help except me. That's the best part that I love. And eventually, the ministry going to be passed on. But I'm the only one that have to make that decision. There are some stories I can tell you within those 20 years, that you wouldn't think to help. But I had to be, stop being a little discreet, ask some questions and making sure that it's good get to the right place, even if it means writing the check and taking it to the light bill place, paying and make the check out to the gas company, even down to going with them and let them get the food and you pay for the food to make sure, just make sure it's used the right way. Even when I tell them that if you don't do the right thing about this, and if you're not telling the truth, remember you're using ministry money. So God will not bless you if you don't tell the truth or if you don't use it the right way. And so when I first started doing it, I was excited. You bring me a light bill, I pay the whole light bill. You bring me a water bill, I pay the whole water bill. You bring me a gas bill, I pay the whole gas bill. Then the Lord, when I got down to $60 one time in the account, he say, what is this called? I said, it's called a little help from heaven. He said, I never told you to pay the whole thing. I told you to help. So now when they come, then I said, okay, you got to have some, and I've got to have some. And we're going to help get this paid. And then we're going to find out how we got into this situation so that we don't get in it again. Yes. So I'm supposed to help you over this hurdle, help you through this month. It is not something that you can live on. So that's what I'm passionate about, is just helping God's people. And they don't have to be his. You can share your story with them, and eventually they will come. I'm glad about that. I will never forget. I even know the first sermon that I preached on. And the children was involved in it. But to see those 3 children come and accept Christ on that first sermon, it just made my day. It just did. I can't hardly forget that. Okay, yes. Don't let me go on too far.
Okay, I'm going to skip down a little bit. Let's see. What are some of the challenges that you faced in your past that helped you to grow into the woman that you are?
First of all, I always believe that And your trials don't come to make you weak. They come to make you strong. And I think as we go through life, first of all, we got to understand that we're human. We're going to make mistakes. And if anybody's saved and they're a pastor that never made a mistake, then they're lying to you. Because we all have made some mistakes. But what we can do is that we don't live in the past. You have to pick up and you grow from that, and then you try to be better. You know, you don't make the same mistakes over again. And that's why I try to tell people when they come to me or when I sit down and I minister to others and tell them that we don't live in the past.
Right.
You know, the past is what it is. It's behind you. It is the past. And what you try to do is move on and make your life better than what it was. So I've had some challenges in my life, some very deep ones that I was hurt over, but I trusted God to bring me through them, and I'm able now. And I had to pray a lot because I'm gonna tell you like this. Sometimes the world will fool you. Because the Bible says if you're going to love the world, then you can't love me. You can't love the world and love Christ at the same time. You got to focus on him and focus on the ministry of what your calling is. You in other words, you can't straddle the fence. Understand what I'm saying? The Bible says that you either got to be hot or you got to be cold. You can't be lukewarm. If you're lukewarm, he's going to spew you out of your mouth. I wanted to think that everybody loved me. But everybody don't love me. And he let me know that sometimes people will take advantage of your kindness. They have taken advantage of us, but we have to get stronger and we grow from that. And that's what I want to believe. There's some mistakes I made. There's some errors that I created in my life that I had to pick up the pieces, learn from them, and grow from them. But I didn't stay there. And I didn't let it turn me bitter. And that's the key to it.
Yeah.
And I didn't let it change my heart. Because sometimes when you go through things, it can turn your heart, but you don't do that. So I counsel people even when they lose a loved one and you might want to be bitter, you can't be bitter. You can't be bitter with God. You can't be bitter with anybody. You don't let nothing turn your heart to be bitter. And the Bible says that, if they misuse you, love them anyway. So if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him water.
That's right.
And that's what I do. That's what I do. I have not let anything, in spite of all that I've gone through, have not let anything, any obstacles, anything anybody said about me, change my heart. And that's what they can't understand about me. They can't change my heart. Because, see, when your heart is soft, God can get in, but when it's stony, he can't get in. Right. And you'll be asking him to help you and lead you, and he can't even get in to do that. So the heart has to stay soft to allow him to lead you. And you have to be open-minded as well. So I'm glad of that. Yes. I didn't let nothing make me turn, instead of turning me bitter, it made me better. Yeah. It made me better. Yes. That's what it did.
Absolutely. Okay. Is there any goals that you've yet to accomplish in your life? Anything that you would like to still do?
I love Lincoln Park. And I pray, when I was on the commission board, I made this statement. I said that Lincoln Park was like an elephant. And you can't eat a whole elephant at one time, but you can take little bites out of it and you can improve it as you go on. We've had community block grants for water. We had a community block grant for sewage that we finally was able to get. We've had a community block grant for our playground. The children have a playground that we're proud of. For streets improvement, we didn't have curb and gutter. We didn't have sidewalks. And we've got an area now where a couple of streets where the community block grant came in, and we have curb and gutter. Water can drain down in there. So children have a sidewalk. Seniors have a sidewalk they can walk on without having to walk in the street. I would love to see that community to look like every other community. Will it happen? I think it's possible, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's just going to take the county and the community to take pride in what you have and to want more and to try to improve it. You know, a lot of people think that every house and every home is rental, but it's not. We've got homeowners out there that take pride in their homes where they live, and they're improving in their homes. But in the midst of all the homeowners, they are a rental property. And when people rent, they don't take pride sometimes in where they rent. I wish they would, but they don't. A renter and a homeowner are totally different. When you own your home, you take pride in where you live and you keep it up, and you want it to be to beautify, because you want the value of your home to have something.
Renters have a short-term mindset, and homeowners have the long-term.
That's it. And I hope one day that that we will have, you know, homes that can be built that's affordable. You know, that's a dream of mine, to see affordable homes in Lincoln Park. That's not too far stretched, to see affordable homes in Lincoln Park that people can own, can buy and purchase, own for themselves one day. There are other communities. There's a beautiful community down in Macon, you know, where they tore down all the old dilapidated houses and built back affordable homes that people are buying and living in. Beautiful. There's a Lincoln Park community in every county. You can't tell me that it's not there.
Yeah.
But you have to have the interest of the community, the interest of your district commissioner. You have to have, and that's what we were. We was all about improving what we had, making things better for them. You know, even at my home, you know, somebody wrote an article one time that says, you know, when I was county commissioner, Miss Trice, she's on that corner up there, and she's got all these houses down the street, and she's not doing anything about those houses. Well, the house that we had used to be an old funeral home. My husband remodeled that house and made something out of an old funeral home and turned it into a house. Nobody never mentioned that. He did that. You know, he took what he had, took what he owned. The Lord gave him the plan to do it with. He woke up one morning and said, I know how I'm going to do it. I said, do what? I'm going to turn an old funeral home into our house. Our what? You know, and he did it. You know, so we took what we had and we made something out of it. And there are other people in Lincoln Park community that does the same thing. They took what they had and they remodeled it and they made something out of it. I never forgot where I lived. And I'm going to tell you something. When I first came to Thomaston, I lived down on the corner of East Washington, on Washington Street and East Walker Street. There was a boarding house there. I didn't even know where I was going to live when I came. But the principal at that time, Mr. Saul Johnson, and they told me when I get to Thomaston, call Saul Johnson, he would find me a place to stay. And there was a house that had 4 teachers in it, and that's where I stayed. But I was told, do not go to Lincoln Park. You know, they just told me that, you know. Didn't tell me why I shouldn't go, but do not go to Lincoln Park. And I said, why? So I was in Thomaston 2 years and never knew anything about the celebration. It would go on. I didn't see no parade. I didn't see none of that. They said, do not go to Lincoln Park. And when I married my husband, guess where I end up at? In Lincoln Park. And I told him the story. They said, they told you what? They said, do not go to Lincoln Park. And I didn't. I didn't know a lot of people, but they told me that, do not go to Lincoln Park. And that's where I've been, in Lincoln Park. And that's where my business is, and that's where my home is.
Well, you said something that I've been saying for the past 3 or 4 years. When it comes to community activity, I rent. But just because I rent, we still have to make sure our yard.
You have a duty to take care of where you're renting.
We have to make sure the yard is straight.
Yes.
Can't trash it up too much.
Yes.
They don't allow us to have tore blinds in the window.
There you go.
And there's a certain level of rules that we kind of have to abide by, where a lot of the neighborhoods don't want any rules.
Don't want any.
They don't.
And they think when they pay their rent, they could do just like they want to do. But you're right. When you have a standard set for the living, you know, for the premise. And you can set this, okay, if you're going to live here, this is what I expect. Like they told you, this is what they expect. And then that's what keep the neighborhood up. That's what can build a neighborhood. You are exactly right. So it's not just renters. It's what the standard that the person set for their property.